Hi everyone, and welcome back to another Retronaut video. So, why have I been away for about, 2 months, something like that? Well, I've had a bit of a pet project that I've been working on for a while. It's actually bang on target to do with the actual channel itself, so don't worry, I'm not getting distracted away from doing videos for the channel. But it's been something which has been a long time in the making, and there's a bit of a story about how it's come to pass, so please bear with me while I explain what's been going on. So about 7 years ago, something like that, I moved into a new home. It's a house on a housing estate. So I moved into this area, into a house with a relatively big garden. That's one of the things I liked about this area, is that the houses have these pretty big gardens. Some of their gardens are actually really, really massive, too big to be honest. And the reason why I wanted a house with a garden was because I'd been living in an apartment ever since I'd left home from when I was a teenager. I went to university, did graphic design, and then I ended up moving around the country. I never really liked apartments. I don't like the restrictiveness of living in like a little box. I know it's the way that a lot of people live, but I grew up living in a pretty modest house actually when I was a kid on a council estate. And I loved it there, it was great, it was nice, and you had a certain freedom, you could go out into your back garden anytime you wanted to and just relax and listen to the birds and things like that. It sounds a bit hippy-dippy, but it's just something that I just grew up with and I missed, I wanted to have a house with a garden. So we moved in here, we set about renovating it, it needed a lot of work, and that's ongoing, it still needs some more work. But that's the same as most properties, especially when they're period properties. Our house was built in 1930, something like that. So insulation isn't such a good thing in it. But once I got the house, I started to get into gardening, which was the whole point of getting the house. So we started to visit, my wife and I, various garden centres in the area. And in one of the garden centres, there was this little village of log cabins. And I thought they were really interesting. Not something I really had an ambition for myself, but I thought they were pretty cool. To have like a little, I don't know, hobby space or thing like that at the end of your garden would be quite nice. But I didn't really have the budget for it at the time, and I kind of put that to the back of my head. And then I started to get into 3D printing a bit. I was watching videos on YouTube about 3D printing, and I found out that you could actually get some of the sort of props from Fallout, the video game, as 3D prints, and then you were meant to paint those yourself. So I was watching these videos about people painting these props and doing a really good job of it. Like film, almost like film set quality prop making. I think that's what these guys do as a job. And I was interested in this because when I was young, I had the hobby of painting, toy soldiers, Warhammer, Dungeons and Dragons characters, things like that. I got pretty good at it. I won a competition. Then I went to university and I got into computer graphics, and I became more interested actually in doing virtual graphics. Obviously, making models of 3D models in using polygons and things like that. So I got into that, and that was a big journey that went on for a good 20 years or so, something like that. But now I was interested again in making these, making these props, maybe because I was pretty good at 3D modeling, and that's actually how you make these models before you 3D print them out. And I thought it'd be really cool to paint them, get myself an airbrush. But the problem is, there was nowhere in my house where I could actually use an airbrush, not without, getting a clout around my head from my wife. Well deservedly, as say the dining table ended up being covered in paint. I'm not stupid. I wouldn't do that. It's my dining table as well, so I wouldn't damage it. So I thought to myself, where could I get myself a space? And the thought about the cabin came back, and I thought, well, maybe that would be quite cool actually to have the cabin as a hobby space, somewhere I could paint things like that. But again, it's a very expensive thing to buy a cabin just to paint some props, from Fallout. And how many times am I going to do that? It's not the kind of thing I'm going to do year in, year out, My wife said she would like me to move out of the house into a different office space because I work from home. That wasn't ideal. I mean, it was ideal for me to a certain degree. I mean, I'm working from home. But the problem is when she had a day off, I would disturb her because I would be talking with people from work over, Zoom. And she would disturb me because she might have friends around. They might have a bit of a big chat, and that could be distracting from my work as well. And so the work thing was clashing with my personal life. And one of the solutions to that would be to get a cabin so I could then work in the cabin. And then, she would have peace when she had her days off, and I'd have peace in the same way. But again, it's a pretty expensive thing to do. So I hadn't sort of reached the critical mass yet where I thought, let's go ahead and get the cabin. I did price it up. So I went to the cabin village and I asked the representative there how much it would cost for the cabin. And the one I was interested in was, I think it was about £9,000, something like that, which isn't too bad. But then I realized I wanted to get a double wall version of it, which means that the wall, instead of it being just 4.5 centimeters thick wood, it also would have an air gap and another wall. So that would give you a wall which is 14 centimeters thick with a 5 centimeter thick air gap in the middle, which would make it much more practical as a space which you could use. Because in the UK here, in the winter, it gets very cold and obviously very windy as well. Today, for instance, there's a big storm going on in the UK with pretty severe winds, and temperature's not too bad, but sometimes they can combine and that can be pretty nasty. So you want to have a space where you can work, you can not feel cold, you can feel comfortable. So I thought, okay, well, definitely I would have to get the double walled cabin. And I think that was about 50% more expensive. So, it's still not bad really for the space that you were getting. And then COVID kicked off. And that was the end of that. The cabin company effectively shut down. I mean, it seemed to go into hibernation, obviously, because they couldn't really go around to people's houses. So I don't think they did much more work during that whole pandemic situation. I carried on working because I work from home. My wife carried on working, so we were very lucky in that regard. But in terms of money, we did okay. We didn't have any financial problems caused by COVID. So in fact, we were extremely lucky in that regard. Nobody in our family got seriously ill. It was amazing that we actually managed to sail along, that edge and come out the other side without any real major harm. During COVID, like a lot of people, I became interested in retro computing a bit more. I'd kind of been interested in it a little bit before. I think I'd bought myself a couple of I bought myself a mini Commodore 64 3D print and an Amiga mini print, and you put a Raspberry Pi in them and then they would emulate, a Commodore 64 or an Amiga. And I found that was quite interesting. But I had to say, I kind of missed the real machines. I missed my old physical computers, the keyboards and all that. And I think that's a big part of retro computing. It isn't for some people. For some people, it's just the software, it's just the games. They use emulation and that's good enough for them. And I understand that. But for me, I missed the actual artifacts, having an actual physical Amiga. So I was watching YouTube videos, 8-Bit Guy and Adrian's Digital Basement, retro recipes, and they were interesting. And I thought, it'd be quite cool if I come out of this whole pandemic in decent condition, if I should then maybe start my own channel, because of my background, working at the Bitmap Brothers, working with a lot of different computers over the years, I've worked with a lot of different types of technology, and I had a very lucky upbringing in that I managed to have a few of the, the famous and not so famous 8-bit computers. Then I went on to have a really good Amiga career, Amiga 500, Amiga 1500, Amiga 4000. I was extremely lucky to have, those devices. So I sort of went through that whole golden era of the Amiga and the Commodore 64. And I thought, I'd have some interesting viewpoints to bring to the field, as do many people. So last year I set about actually setting up this channel. And to do that, I needed to have a space. So we have a spare room on the side of our property, which we actually built ourselves, with builders, pretty soon after we moved in, because it was a project that was left by the previous owners and they'd left it incomplete. And they'd left it incomplete in a way that you really needed to finish it. It was a bit ridiculous. They'd left it almost like a garage, but it wasn't meant to be. It was actually meant to be a side house. So we decided to complete that project and get a room finished. But once we finished it, we didn't really have a strong need for that room. Right now, it has a sofa bed in it, and there's nothing much else in there, because we're still working out really what we want to do, how we want to furnish it. So I knew that room was kind of spare. I knew I could do the channel in there, but I knew that I didn't want to damage the room. We literally just built it a couple of years earlier, and I didn't want to go in there and knock lots of screws and holes in the wall and all that kind of stuff. And the reason why I needed to do that was there were a few things I had in my mind that I would need to do for my YouTube set. I wanted to have curtains, and the reason for that was because I just wanted something to cover up the walls, so it wasn't just plain, plaster behind me, plasterboard. So I thought some kind of curtains would be cool. It's a bit theatrical, isn't it? So I thought that would be an interesting backdrop. I knew that I would have to have lights, some of which could be floor standing. Others would have to be mounted on the ceiling, possibly mounted on the walls. So I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to damage the ceiling, didn't want to damage the walls. And the other thing I wanted to do was I wanted to have some sort of indication of the stuff that I was interested in. So I wanted to have some pictures behind me, these pictures, and they needed somewhere to hang. And so I came up with this plot where I would build this wooden frame, and then I would put curtains on it, and then I would put the pictures. And in the end, I got the pictures by hanging them from fishing wire, I think it was, something like that. So last August, something like that, I remember it was quite warm at the time. I bought the wood. I put the frame together over about a day and a half. Then I got the curtains, the material bought, and I got them sewed together so they could actually work as curtains. And I put together this little set that you see here, which is very familiar to you if you've been watching the channel. Now, around that time as well, I became a lot more serious about getting the cabin. I thought, let's see how the channel does. If the channel does reasonably well, then I think after a while I will find this set a little bit limiting. And I think that's actually exactly what happened. I started doing videos, and I enjoyed doing the videos, and people enjoyed watching them. And I had certain ambitions for the videos, and I had, when you have like a dream about this is how you would like things to be rather than the way they are. I mean, that's typically the human condition, isn't it? We're always dreaming of a more perfect situation for ourselves and for others. And what I really disliked about the setup I had was if I wanted to repair a computer or do any sort of DIY whatever on the computer, clean it, I had to do it on the dining table, which was in a different part of my house. I didn't feel comfortable filming there. It's literally in our living room, which meant my wife couldn't be there when I was filming, which meant that I had to either do that stuff when she was out or when it was late at night, which meant that, that was really awkward. So that was one issue. Another issue was during COVID, I started to collect all these computers and equipment for them. And I eventually ended up with quite a big collection, all stuffed away in different rooms in the house. Our spare bedroom, our loft, the studio itself. Computers were stored over there, behind the camera over there. This room became, honestly, a bit of a mess because as I was buying these things, I started to run out of space in which I could store them. And I think the tipping point was that I couldn't use them. I could put them on the table, make a video about them, and then put them away in a box. And I had to do that because if I wanted to make another video, I had to clear this space and get another computer up on here to do the next video, which meant I had to pack away the last computer. So unfortunately, although I was making these interesting videos about these different computers that I owned, I didn't really get to use them. I had to keep on storing them away. And that became really frustrating. And the reason why some of the computers were stored in the room was because I didn't want to put them away in the loft, because I then had some ability of putting them on the table here and using them a bit, in between videos for my own personal enjoyment. And, what's the point of this hobby if it's not to enjoy these retro computers that we bought, right? And I just couldn't do it. So the cabin could be a place where I could do painting of props. It is a space in which I could work in my day job. A home office away from the home, which meant there was a bit of sort of professional space between my job and my home, which I think is a good thing. And then, of course, I could use the space as a space in which to put my computers, the ones that I owned, and change the way that I do this channel, change the way that I film. So the deposit was paid in March, and I then set about working on the foundation, which ended up being built in concrete as a way to ensure the longevity of the cabin. I removed everything I could from the list that the company that made the cabin could supply, because I found a lot of their extras were, in my opinion, overpriced. I'll give you an example. For instance, the wall insulation that they offered to do, which was literally just slotting in pieces of foam board, was, I think, £1,600 to do that. I asked them what the foam board was, and they said it was 2.5 centimeters thick. I had a look at the price of 5 centimeter thick foam board. I think it was 4 actually what I went for in the end, because it wouldn't fit in the wall otherwise. And that, if I bought it myself, was about £400. Fitting it myself would be free. And so I'd end up basically with insulation that was twice as thick, but would only cost £400 instead of spending £1,600. So it's a no-brainer. Crossed that off the list, crossed off the insulation for the floor, crossed off the insulation for the roof. They would paint it as well, but that was too expensive, so I got rid of that. I didn't even ask, actually, because I knew if it was £1,600 for the foam board, which I worked out to be about half a day's work, how much would they charge to paint a cabin, you know, exterior and interior? And you don't forget, whenever you paint something, you have to paint it twice, you know, first coat. The wood had to be preserved, then painted again. And it had to be, so effectively painted 3 times interior and exterior. There's a lot of work. It would have cost probably, I'm estimating, £5,000 to get the cabin painted. So the cabin was delivered on the 15th of September of this year. And after that, all work on video stopped, because it was a full-time job trying to get the cabin finished. You have this naive idea that they're going to turn up, they're going to put the cabin down, there's going to be a little bit of work. And after about 3 weeks, I thought it was literally going to take 3 weeks, and then the cabin would be ready to go. And I'd be able to move into the cabin and, you know, start working on the videos. That wasn't the case. I ended up having to paint the cabin myself because the painter that I'd hired fell through. And then after paying him, I think he actually did work on the cabin for about 3 days, but I realized at the pace that he was going and the amount of work that there was, how much it was going to cost me to paint the cabin. So I decided that although he fell through, it was a good thing, because I would actually get the painting done much more cheaply than he would. So budget was always an issue, right? Because it's an expensive item and everything you can do yourself matters. The roof, I eventually got an external company to do. They did it for the same price as the cabin people, but in my opinion, they did a much better job. They did a fantastic job on the roof of the cabin, so that came out really well. Actually tiled roof, using this sort of modern slate replacement material, plastic concrete, I think it is, something like that. Lasts a very, very long time, and doesn't shatter like slate will. Then I had to build a shed, because the old shed that had to be demolished to make room for the cabin, well, I still have to have a shed to put my garden equipment in. So then I set about building a shed. That was weeks of work. Then I had to make tables for the interior of the cabin. That's something which took a lot of work. If you've seen this table on the channel, this was a table I actually made myself. It's made from butcher's block, which is generally used for kitchen surfaces. I had a bunch of this stuff which was being, well, potentially thrown away, but I made sure that that didn't happen. When we had our kitchen redone last year, I kept all the butcher's block and I upcycled it into tables, and this is one of them. And I wanted to use the same technique to make the tables in the cabin, because I knew I needed a lot of tables, and I knew that some of the computers were very heavy. So the table had to be very robust, and I found that this technique produces very robust tables. I also needed shelves, so I've been working on the shelving. You name it, I've been working on it. I've been Mr. DIY. I've been watching YouTube more than ever, learning how to hang doors, learning how to build a shed, the whole thing from the ground up. I think the only thing I didn't do on the shed was the concrete foundation. That was done by the builders when they did the foundation for the cabin. So where does that leave us? Well, right now, the studio that you can see here is in the house. And obviously that's not useful because we're not going to make any use of the cabin that way. So what I need to do is move it from the house into the cabin.
It's already in the cabin.
What?
It's already in the cabin.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Seems like we're already in the cabin. So if that's the case, let me get up, get the camera, and I'll give you a little tour of the cabin. Let me just take it out of the stand. And welcome to the Retronaut set from an angle you've never seen it before. And to be honest, in a location you've never seen it before. Yeah, it's a bit odd, isn't it? But it's actually taking up most of the room in the cabin right now. And let me just show you around. It's still quite a small space. It's not gigantic. Just going to turn on the cabin lights so we can see a little bit more clearly. So we have, let me show you the entrance. There's the entrance there, where you can see myself reflected in the window. And to the left of it is one of the tables that I made. This one actually has casters on it. And the reason why it has casters on it is because this was the table that I use normally to hold the camera. And it allows me to move the camera around like a little dolly, move it around the room. Now, I must apologize for the mess. There's a lot of mess. There's still a lot of dust because it's still actually a work in progress. But I wanted to show this to you as soon as possible so you get an idea of what I'm up to. So people don't think I've abandoned the channel, which I most definitely have not. In the corner there's a bunch of monitors and an iMac that I rescued from a car boot sale. And these monitors are going to be used with the computers. Here is one of the tables that I've made. This one's about 2.7 meters long, to give you an idea. And I've actually decided to put it there because this is going to be my workstation where I do soldering, hobbies and things like that. Once this area is clear, this is the area of the cabin which is going to be used for 3D printing. I'm planning to get a 3D printer. I've waited for years to actually get one. Now they've come down to a decent price, so I can actually get a pretty decent one, I think, for about £400, something like that. So that's going to be 3D printing station in the corner there. Let's go around the corner. Down into the corner of the cabin, you can see I put some shelves up. This is going to be my workstation area. This is actually where I'm going to do video editing. And there you can see, look, there's my soldering station ready to be put in position. I've got a desolder gun down there, I think, as well. And some of the computers are actually underneath this pile here, my Apple II GS. And here you can see some of the shelving that I have. So the plan with the shelving is that I'm going to recycle the LED lighting from here. And I'm actually going to put it on the underside of the shelving and on the top side so that it will downlight the desks. And it will uplight the shelf here. Not really sure if I want to put it on top as well. And the only reason for that is the expense of it. It's actually pretty expensive. But maybe in the long run, when I get some more funds, especially if any of you would be kind enough to actually join the channel and help with this upkeep, then I can actually get some lights on the top shelf as well to help illuminate all the items up there. To give you an idea of scale, there I've actually put the large box of Enchanter, which is quite big. That's like an A4 sheet, and behind it I've got Frontier, which I bought the other day from one of the events that I attended. And I actually have these monitors on the desk, my iMac over there, mainly to give me a sense of scale, because I've only literally just done these shelves, and what I wanted to do was make sure that I built the first layer of shelving at a height that would make sense to get the computers underneath. And then I wanted to make sure that the second and third tiers of shelving are at a decent height, that they're not too big, not too small, if you see what I mean. Underneath the desks right now are all of the computers. There's my Amiga 2000. There's, I can't work out if that's an IBM 5170 or 5150. It's quite hard to tell from there. I've got a Mac monitor there. Loads of computers there. I think that's my ICL machine there. There's my Amiga 4000, which needs more repairing because there's a problem with the riser card in it. But yeah, I mean, it's a lot more space. I mean, I can now, as you can see, have multiple computers set up for display and for use at the same time. Down in the corner here, this is actually where the table that I was just sitting behind will sit. Right now, it's got all of my DIY equipment, my spotlights for working in the dark, my circular saw, jigsaw, etc., etc. And this table as well is being used to host these items. The work for the shed is still ongoing. So yeah, that's something which I have to keep on doing, unfortunately, for now. I have to keep the equipment in here so that I can go outside and work on the shed easily. The electrics are using a dado rail, which goes all the way around the entire cabin. This sounds crazy, but I literally have, I think it's 34 to 36 double sockets. Actually, I think one or two of them are single sockets. And each one of those double sockets is meant to power a computer. So you can get an idea of how many computers I thought I could fit in. But in reality, I actually think I can fit more. I think I can get them slightly closer together than I was originally imagining. Having said that, I don't think I can get all of the computers on display at the same time. And I think what might happen is that I may rationalize on some of the equipment that I have, because during COVID and over the last couple of years, I bought some machines. Some of them were just unexpected. The IBM 5170s, for instance, were kind of given to me. That's a long story, which I won't bother with now, but I intended to buy something and I ended up getting 2 computers for free, which wasn't a bad thing to happen. But yeah, I'm not quite sure I need 3 very old IBM machines, because I actually do have a 5150. So yeah, like I said, this is the area where I'm going to sit to do my day job and video editing for the channel. Over here is going to be the workstation area where I do soldering and working on machines that are broken or need modification. Right next to it, we're going to have the 3D printing station in this area. The mobile table can actually go end on. It wouldn't actually block the door too much, so I might actually do that. I've only done it like that temporarily. And then over here, like I said, this is where all the computers start. So this table here, which is the sort of traditional Retronaut table that I sit behind, that's going to go into the corner there. I actually pulled it out today just to make this video. And then you're going to have all these machines on display here. Here's my Amiga 1000, for instance. So yeah, my Pac-Man lamp, which I bought the other day, gives off a fantastic orange glow. And the lighting theme for the under shelf and above shelf lighting is going to be, I think, teal. That's the color I'm going to go for. I think I might actually have to put some kind of trim here. My original plan was to, I've actually bought a router for this, which I've not learned to use yet, but I was going to route a groove into this to put the LED lighting into. But I actually think that I would still be able to see the LED lighting, which would be quite annoying. So I may actually put some kind of trim along there to actually hide it from view when I'm walking, because it's just annoying to be able to see LED lights. You want them to illuminate, but you don't really want to see a light fixture, really, if you can. So yeah, what else is there to say? The router is currently on the table. I plan for that eventually to go onto the ceiling, maybe, if I can get some brackets made for it. It is annoying in that it has these antennae, and 2 of which have become very relaxed. They just won't stay up anymore. I guess that comes to all of us with age. What else is there? Spotlights on the ceiling currently. I would call those sort of house lights. I don't really intend to have those on when I'm recording videos. It wouldn't produce particularly attractive lighting. But it's very good for when you want to show, obviously, people around the cabin, or if you want to work on the cabin, clean it, whatever. Yeah, right now, very, very dusty in here still, because I've actually had to do a lot of the work, which is intended for outdoor inside the cabin, because it's been, well, we're in the winter now, so the weather's turned, and you can't rely on the weather anymore. So yeah, let me just put you back in the stand, in the tripod, I should say. So there we go. Now the mystery is over. That's what I've actually been working on for the last few months. It's a bit of a line in the sand for me. It's quite scary actually to move on. just setting up the channel itself was, a bit of a challenge and a bit of a push into uncertainty. Anything like this is a risk, because you don't know if people are going to like your videos. You don't know if you're going to work out well on camera, etc., etc., etc. So it was obviously a big risk getting this cabin made, a big financial risk for myself. So like I said, if you can, please join the channel and help with this upkeep. Adrian has his digital basement. Sayaka has her digital attic. And up until now, I've had my spare room in my house, which hasn't really been the ideal environment in which, to make my videos. Now I have the cabin, which I'm also calling the Fox's Den. And no, I'm not the fox. The fox is actually, the foxes used to live under the shed. And during COVID, they actually had babies and 3 of them came out. And that was a really magical day when we watched the baby foxes running around our garden. Actually, this summer, they had babies as well. And when it came to demolishing the shed, it made me really nervous that we were going to end up evicting them. I felt really bad about that. But the reality was, when we came round to doing it, there was no sign of the foxes, which was really strange. No babies, nothing. So it looks like actually the mother fox moved them to a different location prior to that. Maybe it was because, I was going up to the shed and looking at it, and maybe she became nervous of my activity around the shed. So it looks like they cleared out before any of the demolition action actually started, which was really good, because I didn't want the, obviously the baby foxes to be affected. So yeah, this is the cabin, or the Fox's Den, whatever you want to call it. And I'm just really, really buzzing to move in here fully, get the shelves populated with some really cool retro stuff, my games, retro themed lamps, things like that. Get it decorated and get it looking really cool. Get my computers on the table. And actually, this video is probably one of the last times you'll ever see this set. And from now on, we'll be seeing the cabin instead. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you did, then please obviously click on the like button and help to get this out to other people. And if you want to watch my videos in the future, if you're new to the channel, then please click on the subscribe button and make sure you hit the bell, because otherwise you won't know about any of my videos until, when they're released. They'll just fly past you and you won't know about it. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed the information in this video, and I hope to see you in future videos. Until then, take care and have a good day.